Explain like I'm 5. How did the DARE program supposedly make cases of drug usage go even higher? From my own experience growing up in the 90s, I'd say DARE was fine right up until I tried drugs for the first time. I realized that everything they told us about pot was a lie. So I figured everything they said about all drugs were lies. So I tried more of them. If they had told the truth about less dangerous drugs, people might have believed them about the really bad ones. They made them seem interesting. My first DARE class was the first time I ever heard of weed. It made me very curious about it. Still have my DARE shirt decades later. And smoke a little every day. I was born in '86. I had DARE as a kid. I don't remember much of elementary school by now, but I sure remember my SRO officer Rojas and the wooden briefcase of drugs and paraphernalia for the DARE program. I didn't know anything about drugs before DARE. Afterwards I knew what they looked like and what they did. Lol. DARE was like someone handing you a menu of all the forbidden fruits and at the same time implying that when you reach high school people will be offering them to you for free at every turn. The program 100 made drugs feel commonplace and normal. A big part was it basically taught us that weed is as bad as meth and heroin. That made people that had weed just think meth and heroin wasn't such a big deal. And that it wasn't any worse than weed. Dumbest drug campaign ever. The information wasn't honest. Or presented incorrectly, so not delivering the intended message properly. I remember an officer talking about a coke user that damaged their septum so much they were able to pass a cloth up one nostril and out the other. We all thought that was really cool. They put all drugs into the same bucket of bad. Will destroy your brain, etc. The previous generation survived pot just fine. So we knew that was bull. We didn't have anything as dangerous as fent. Being in 5th grade, my main concern was what level my Draenei Hunter was in Burning Crusade. Then a cop told me about weed in the middle of English class and I thought that sounds interesting. The police would come into the classroom with a 3-fold billboard and they taught us which drugs to use and which drugs to not use. That wasn't their intent, but that was the effect. Because DARE wanted you to know everything about how drugs were scary and evil and too horrible to even tolerate. And nothing about how things actually worked in the real world. Or how people, God forbid, might actually enjoy them. They wanted us to remain forever superstitious children on the topic. It was disgusting. Manipulative bullshit. And when anyone with half a brain saw it as such, good ideas like beware of heroin got discredited. Edit DARE was like the food pyramid, complete horseshit that led a generation astray. To simplify, kids can detect when adults are bullshitting them. And since the DARE was all scare them with BS, it leads to the thought process, if all the anti-drug classes are BS, then how bad can drugs pot be? Face with monocle. My DARE officer ran his son over with a lawnmower while drunk. Then was arrested for soliciting sex from 2 12-year-old girls. You think I'm taking life advice from that guy? Correlation doesn't imply causation. The statistic is that schools who hosted DARE had higher incidence of drug use. Maybe DARE did a good job picking at-risk communities, but a bad job of lowering drug usage. So they would be going to areas with a high risk of drug use and negligibly or not affecting the drug use rate. I was in DARE around age 5. Got a neat little laminated ID with an adorable picture and my thumbprint for whatever reason for completing the program. They taught me what drugs were, what they were called both scientifically and as slang, what they looked like and where they could likely be found either around the house or for purchase on the street. They got a 5-year-old interested and educated on the subject of a thing that had not existed in my little 5-year-old universe up to that point. What a wild program that my son has also now been through in school. DARE or a similar group came to my elementary school in the late 90s and their whole slogan was, "Hugs not drugs." Our logic was that hugs were gay, so we were gonna do drugs instead. I remember DARE being a thing when I was in late elementary, early middle school. I also remember DARE making drugs seem super cool. Became a meme for young stoners to be the kids wearing DARE shirts to school. As someone who grew up with the DARE program, they usually sent the lamest cop ever to tell you they smoking even a bit of weed was a speedrun to overdosing on dirty heroin in an alley real fast. Of course, when kids started smoking weed anyway and realized they just got high with the only side effect being some laughs and munchies, it made people a lot more curious about what else they were lying about. They unintentionally made using drugs cool. Kinda like those older Apple Mac ads that had an arrogant Mac guy and a chill PC user kinda made Mac users seems as jerks and PC users seem normal. If I told kids that you can't eat a new flavor of ice cream because someone will jump out and punch you in the face, the first thing kids will do is want to try the ice cream to see if it's true. Then when they see that not only are you a liar but the ice cream is pretty good, they are going to have more when they may never have tried it in the first place. Instead of being honest with kids and at appropriate ages, we gave a whole generation who had not learned impulse control something to be curious about, while also showing that we are liars. At least about minor drugs. They were one tentacle of the business development arm of Reagan's prison industrial complex. The way it was taught was completely insane. You'd have a cop show up and explain that alcohol and marijuana are exactly as bad as heroin and meth. Shockingly, students who were currently high thought, oh, heroin mustn't be that bad then, and found some and got addicted. 1. They made drugs to be a forbidden thing. When teens rebel, they sometimes do the forbidden things. 2. The cost of exaggeration is loss of credibility. DARE exaggerated the risks of drugs. It was scare tactics by police officers who knew very little about the drugs. I literally heard a story about heroin addict licking their own poop to get high. When kids see other kids smoking cannabis and nothing tragic happening, they conclude that they were lied to. Showed kids what the drugs look like, what their street names are, and what the high feels like. Then they showed patronizing cartoons that told kids that drugs are bad. MK. In 5th grade, when we had DARE class, I vividly remember learning about LSD and thinking that sounded like a good time. And same as many others said, learning what we were taught was unrealistic fear, for most drugs turned out to be nothing when used responsibly and in moderation. As someone who was forced to sit through a DARE class about every 5 minutes, the DARE instructor, God, why is that phrase burned into my memory, would mention some drug we'd never heard of, describe how cool it is, tell us a bunch of crazy shit that couldn't possibly be true about how evil they are, and then go, drugs are bad. And then we got to play with the drunk goggles. DARE, where I went to school, had a kick-ass Ferrari they'd seized from a dealer. And they bragged about all the cash seized from dealers as well. It was really great advertising for becoming a drug dealer. I know for some kids in my class, just say no meant don't get high on your own supply. I know I thought drugs were interesting when I encountered DARE. I wanted to read and learn more about them so I would recognize them if I saw them, or know how to take care of my friends if they did them. After reading more books than I realized there would be in the library, I realized that everything they said was fake, and it was less about drugs being bad and more about people being stupid. So I got smarter and, after my 18th B-day, did every drug I could find.